Okay. Announcement is made that adequate notice of this meeting has been given and is being conducted in accordance with the NJSA 10:4-6 et sec of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act. Nora, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Dedeek.
Here.
Councilman DePiero.
Here.
Mr. Mealy.
Here.
Mr. Matt.
Present.
Mr. Napolitano.
Here.
Mr. Shaw.
Here.
Mr. Stanziel.
Here.
Ms. Healy. Here. Mr. Von Aiken.
Here.
We have our board planner, Ms. Winters, our board engineer, Mr. Canjiano, and our board attorney, Ms. Stanley.
Okay, this is a meeting for the Township of Parsippany-Troy Hills Planning Board. Today is August 7th, 2023. The time is 7:30 PM. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. This is a public meeting. With that said, are there any members of the general public who would like to make any comments or presentations that are not on the agenda for this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to our agenda. Item on the agenda, application number 23:520, Federal Realty, 1123 Route 46. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Please come forward.
Good evening, Luke Pontier of the law firm Day Pitney, here this evening on behalf of the applicant. May I be seated?
Yes.
The applicant is the owner of property, as just recited, of 1123 Route 46, and that is block 729, lot 7 on this township's tax map. The property is located in the B1 district, and we're here this evening seeking minor site plan approval along with a bulk variance related to parking. The property that I'm sure you all know well is approximately 19 acres in size and is referred to as the Troy Hills Shopping Center. It has major tenants, including Michael's, Petco, and Target. The applicant proposes to lease an approximately 6,760 square foot portion of the shopping center that used to house the Dollar Tree to a new tenant, Phoenix Salon. There are no exterior improvements proposed as part of this application, but due to the change in tenancy to a salon, the applicant seeks a variance to permit the 1,025 existing parking spaces where a minimum of 1,370 parking spaces are required per your ordinance. In support of the requested relief, we did submit a parking evaluation prepared by McMahon Associates dated June 9th of this year, which confirms that there remains sufficient parking throughout the shopping center to house this additional use. And testimony will be provided further in support of that. We did receive 2 reviews from your board professionals, one from your engineer that was dated July 13th, and one from your planner that was dated July 21st. We have 4 witnesses with us this evening, a tenant representative, an applicant representative, our traffic engineer, and a professional planner. We published notice in the Daily News on July 27th and mailed it to property owners within 200 feet of the subject property on that same date, and an affidavit of service and mailing was provided to the board prior to tonight. As part of the board planner's review, there were some completeness items. Would the board like to address those before proceeding?
That would be our normal process. Planner, would you mind?
Sure. Yeah, there are a number of waivers related to the fact that there are no external changes proposed. These include the location of existing easements and right-of-ways, contours, proposed spot elevations, floor plans for the existing and proposed buildings, existing proposed utility services, storm drainage design and improvements, site illumination, landscaping, an environmental assessment report, existing easements, contours, proposed signs, fences, and utility services. And we don't have any objections to those waivers.
Okay. Do any members of the board have questions or comments about the waivers being requested? Seeing none, make a motion to approve.
Second, Matt.
All right.
You're asleep, Dominic.
Okay. And with that said, Nora, please call the roll.
Deech,
Yes.
DePiero,
Yes.
Neely, Matt,
Yes.
Napolitano.
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Stanzio,
Yes.
Neely,
Yes.
Von Aiken.
Yes. Okay, waivers are approved. Please continue.
Thanks so much. And just to confirm, there were a couple items that were not necessarily noted as waivers, but that your planner requested be addressed as part of the resolution compliance. So should we be fortunate to get an approval, we're happy to agree to those items. And with that, we will call our first witness, Matt Haley, who's a representative of the applicant.
Good evening, everyone.
Could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And please state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address for the record. It could be a business address.
Matthew Haley, Haley. Address is 50 East Wynwood Road, Wynwood, Pennsylvania.
Thank you.
And just to confirm, Mr. Haley will be a fact witness.
Okay.
Mr. Haley, can you please confirm your role with the applicant?
Senior Project Manager, Tenant Services.
Great. And so as part of that, you oversee tenant relationships at a variety of shopping centers that are owned and operated by the applicant?
Yes.
And are there other shopping centers operated by the applicant that include a Phoenix Salon or a comparable salon suite operator?
Yes. Phoenix is a quality operator, adds value for any shopping center. We're excited to have them join us here at Troy Hills.
Great, thank you. And based on their tenancy at other locations, would you anticipate any issues with parking?
We do not anticipate any parking issues. You'll hear from our traffic engineer, there's plenty of access parking in an existing lot and be able to handle Phoenix's parking demands.
And there haven't been any issues at your other sites that house a Phoenix Salon?
No, we haven't had any issues at other sites with Phoenix.
Thank you. And there was a question that came up in the board engineer's review about waste removal. Can you please provide operationally how that happens at the shopping center?
Yes. Each tenant will clean out its own space, collect its own waste. Tenants then bring their waste to a common dumpster on site, which is then collected by the hauler. This is the same for all tenants. No changes are anticipated due to Phoenix tenancy.
Thank you. And to go to one comment that came up in the board planner's review, there is a discrepancy between the number of parking spaces that have been approved under the last application and the number of spaces that are existing today. Are you able to clarify that discrepancy?
Yes. A prior approval for Target in the shopping center included a parking variance to allow 1,038 parking spaces. On site today, there are 1,025 parking spaces, which has been confirmed both by our survey and our traffic engineer. The tenant Target handled the application, and we believe an error likely occurred in their surveying process to count the car corrals as parking spaces, which is incorrect. The correct number of parking spaces is 1,025, and we propose on maintaining this number as part of the application.
Thanks, Matt. I don't have any further questions for him on direct. I open it up to the board. Do you have any questions?
You have,
Mr. Chairman?
go ahead, Mr. Stanzio.
Any concerns of that whole strip mall area becoming defunct and then like a bailout or leaving, like what's the problem? Are you signing a lengthy lease as the organization? I know that. I'm just looking at what's been in there and what's moving out of there.
Correct.
Right, so it's tight. And you've got some major tenants moving out and some tenants moving in. So are there concerns of that not being a relevant property in the future?
No, there's no concerns. Right now, Phoenix Salon is the one tenant filling the vacancy. We look ahead for future vacancies and
You have Home Goods leaving.
not that I'm aware of.
Home Goods may be
Home
at
Goods,
the shopping center across the street.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We have Eastport leaving. That's it.
Eastport is a tenant at this site, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's no concerns
To my
at the
knowledge,
applicant
no.
level of, changing this from being a shopping center use, correct?
No.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Matt.
You mentioned you have Phoenix salons at some of your other properties. How many suites do they have?
Anywhere from 20 to 30, larger suites above 8,000 could have as many as 40,
Okay, so you actually have some that are as big as this one is proposed?
in bigger, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we do have a representative from the tenant that can answer questions similar to those as well.
Any questions from our professionals?
Not
No?
No.
Okay. Any questions from the public? All right, seeing none, all of our questions are done.
Great, thank you. Our next witness will be Andrea Covelli, who's a representative of the tenant, sorry.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi. If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And please state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address. It can be a business address.
Andrea Covelli, Covelli, and I'll give you my home address. It's 710 Passaic Avenue in West Caldwell, New Jersey, 07006.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Covelli, can you please describe your role with Phoenix Salons and your relationship to the application tonight?
Of course. Well, I am the owner and operator of the Phoenix Salon franchise proposed for this location. I am a franchisee who will provide luxury salon suites to individuals with proven clientele who are seeking entrepreneurship. I will have about 39 suites in this location with 39 entrepreneurs who intend to operate successful businesses.
Thank you. And can you please describe for this board Phoenix's business model and how Phoenix intends to operate at the site? But before you do, we are going to introduce an exhibit, and this, I believe, will be marked as A1. I have copies of an 11 by 17 version for everybody.
Do you need anything else? Looks like they have a...
Could you
And a large
just,
version is
Okay,
up
great.
there.
and so it's just one sheet?
Yes, just one sheet, and it's comparable Phoenix Salon locations.
Okay. And the presentation that you have on the side here is the same that you're handing out to the board at this time?
That's correct.
Okay.
Sorry about that, Andrea. So could you please provide a description of the business model and how Phoenix intends to operate?
So there are 39 entrepreneurs that each rent out one of the 39 suites within the space. The entrepreneurs are able to select their own services for their business, but the services include hair care, which could be coloring, styling, grooming, nail care, manicures, pedicures, skin care and body care, waxing, massage, tanning. And it's an appointment-only type of business, and we do not accept any walk-ins.
So while the board has the exhibit in front of them, so you just described that there are 39 separate suites within the tenant space. So the picture on the bottom left of the exhibit board, would that be, can you describe what that is for the board?
The suites you're talking about?
Yes.
So that's a typical looking hallway, and on each side of the hallway are the separate businesses, and it kind of will go in, picture like an oval, and salon suites on each side. So everybody has their own business, their own names, everybody runs it how they want, it's very individualized.
And then the photo D, which is on the bottom right of the exhibit, is that an example of what one of the 39 suites would look like?
It could be, and it's at their discretion, and they get the luxury suite that I provide with certain furniture and things like that they can decorate however they want and personalize it to their needs.
Can we ask some questions now?
We'd like her to finish her testimony.
Sure.
Ms. Covelli, could you please describe why you selected this location as a good site?
So Troy Hill Shopping Center is the perfect location for the Phoenix Salon Suites. It's close to all the major highways, and the plaza has easy access from all directions. Parsippany has a great customer base for Phoenix, and we think the residents here will enjoy the services being provided.
Thanks. And what are the average hours of operation for the site?
The general hours of operation are 10 to 5, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., which is typical for a Phoenix Salon Suite. However, each business owner is able to schedule specific appointments to suit their client's needs, and it could be, after regular hours. And then as far as the suites, although there are 39 suites, it's highly unlikely, I just want to point that out, that every single suite would be open and operating at the exact same time. And of course, it would depend on the time of day or the day of the week, but I think it would be fair to say that for 39 suites, perhaps 20 to 30 would be open at the same time, but you won't ever get every single one open.
Thanks. And how many employees generally are anticipated?
So assuming with 100% of the suites rented, there would be about 40 employees.
And so that would be one per suite, and then maybe a receptionist or
Correct.
somebody at the front?
Yes.
Thank you. And in terms of signage, did you intend to have any signage?
Yes, we intend to have a wall sign that will replace the Dollar Tree signage, and it will be in line with Phoenix Salon branding and will comply with all township codes.
And so while it's not proposed as part of tonight's application, a question had come up in the board review memos, so we wanted to address that. And photo A and photo B show what the branding signage would look like, correct? So it would be, those words and in that font, but
Yeah.
perhaps to replace the Dollar Tree signage that
Correct.
existed. Just,
Yes, it would be, as you said, to replace the signage and for Phoenix's branding.
great, thank you. I don't have any more questions on direct. Be happy to answer any from the board.
Okay. Mr. Stanziel?
Sure, I guess, I'm sorry, I was looking at, because Google Maps has some weird funky thing. It said that you were gonna be over there or right over here. But, so in the same, lot, you're gonna be there with Sport Clips, correct?
Correct.
And then, have you traveled up and down, Beverwick Road?
I'm very familiar with Parsippany.
There's probably, what, 8 or 9, 10 lots of salons?
In the whole town.
Yep.
Tons of salons.
Tons, it's crazy. You can go get a haircut,
But that's
like
why
any,
this is a
you can get
good-
ice cream, haircut,
this is a good
Indian
place for
food,
those people to
haircut,
have
ice
it.
cream, haircut, Indian food. So what is your intention with all of those businesses? Because they're all renters, by the way, on our, I guess you'd call that main town Parsippany, right?
Right. So it wouldn't directly affect a salon owner. I used to be a salon owner myself.
Mhm.
And it might be, if a salon has, say, 10 people working for them, but one of those people want to leave and do their own thing,
Mhm.
gives them the opportunity to leave. They have their clientele, which they probably have built for 5 to 10 years, if not more, and they can go and have their own little private suite, just them and their clients.
Understood. Do you see that have you looked at what the detriment could be to the town, like to close down that many? There's a lot, by the way, we probably should have less.
Mr. Stanziel, I'm going to slow you down a little bit. This isn't an application that regards the zoning, or this is an approved use.
I know,
for
it's
this
planning.
place, So, yeah. Because normally I'd be with you on those types of questions.
It's
Yeah.
a permitted use.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna be a pull and play,
Yeah.
is what it's gonna do.
Is there anything else, Mr. Stanziel? I just want
No,
to give
that's
you
it.
an opportunity.
That's it.
Okay. Any other members of the board?
I have a couple. Is it okay?
Yeah, Ms. Veely had a question.
Sorry.
I'll let her get in.
I was just curious, in other towns, this is kind of unique to Parsippany. I'm the zoning officer, so it's unique to us, it's something new. So I'm just curious, in the other towns, because the tenants, normally you get a zoning permit for each tenant name. So we're going to be giving you a tenant name for that specific tenant, but we want to make sure that each of the suites are permitted uses also, because Parsippany has a very unique permitted uses, and our personal service establishments are unique. Do you, in other towns, talk to the town each time the suites change? Or do you generally not do that? Are they all going to be hair salons, nail salons, and tanning, or are there different uses?
Most of them, 90%, 80 to 90% should be hair salons.
Okay.
and
You
then
speak
the
into the
rest-
mic, please.
Oh, sorry. So about 80 to 90% would be hair salons in general. That's the bulk of the business. And then the rest would be in the health and beauty industry.
Because there's definitely a new use called a med spa that has become very popular in Parsippany. And the way that the zoning department is reading is that a med spa has a medical component to it. So I would say that none of those suites could be that sort of med spa. So it's just something to think about going forward, that we make sure that each of those suites meet Parsippany's very unique, very strict zoning guidelines. Because a beauty salon, hair salon is perfect, but as soon as you start to trigger in any of those other personal service establishments, there should be dialogue with us. Because I'm just worried, this is unique, this is the first time we're having this in Parsippany. So we want to keep that dialogue with the township as those suites might change and other uses might want to go into there.
Okay.
Question, Chairman?
Go ahead, Mr. Stanzio.
Not sure if this is in the parameters, just asking a question. Are they all licensing to you so that you know that everyone, are they licensed to you and then they're subcontracted by you and you're paying them? Like, how does that work?
I'm basically like a sub-landlord. So
So you're
I'm
renting like a
renting
spot?
from First Fidelity and then my space, and then I'm providing the space and they're paying me.
But are you checking like licenses and
The
stuff like
State
that?
Board of Cosmetology will handle that. Everybody has to be licensed.
Okay, on that note, I have a question. Could you explain how the proposed use is different from a booth or chair rental, which is prohibited in New Jersey?
To my knowledge, I think it's actually not anymore. They just passed a new law from the State Board of Cosmetology. However, it's different because you're not renting a chair. It's not for my business. They're having their own particular business, just they only have one chair.
And will you be operating as a gallery shop? Will you get a gallery shop
I believe
license?
that's the license that I
Okay.
will have to apply for.
And will each of the individual business owners obtain a mini suite shop license from the Board of Cosmetology?
Correct.
Okay, and would you agree that separate COs would be issued for each suite owner so the town can confirm that the uses are compliant?
I'm not really sure.
They're not COs. Construction doesn't issue specific COs for tenant uses. They only do for renovations. So I'm the director of construction, so we issued tenant permits, zoning tenant
Okay,
permits.
then it's.
But we would be issuing for the full space, not for the separate suites, because the zoning ordinance doesn't ask for that. That's why I want that
But to my knowledge, I
dialogue.
know that we would have everything in place for the zoning per each suite.
Okay. Construction's gonna issue, a CA for the space for any renovations that it has. Not a CO for the space. It's a little bit different.
Okay, so would you agree that each of the tenants would comply with the township's definition of cosmetology, use and not be a med spa use or any other use that's not permitted in this zone?
Yes.
Yeah, it'll have to be a permitted use within all of
Okay.
the subspaces.
Those are all the questions.
Okay. Any other questions from our board?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, so when the Dollar Tree leaves, how long does it take for your, all these suites to be set up? Is there a time frame usually how long it takes?
It's a long project. Dollar Tree did leave already.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah.
From when I actually get my space after landlord does their work, it's without delays, 6-month build out.
Okay. Thanks.
Do you own more than one of these?
No, this is my first, but I'm hoping to own more after this one.
All right.
And what, is
Envy of my
there
life.
any intention on, recruitment processes? I'm sorry, I'm probably sliding off the line, but.
No,
I'll give you a little room there.
I mean, I'll answer that. I'm not allowed to go to places and recruit people, especially within the same plaza. So, there's
Can we
restrictions.
possibly add some kind of condition that you come and at least apply for the tenants, the different ones? No fee involved, because when we issue the permit for you, that's the fee, but for the others, to make sure that we don't have to have somebody that moves in that they tell you, I spoke to zoning and zoning said it was fine, and then we find out that they're more along the medical realm, and that way we prevent any, you don't want to have to rent to somebody who moves in that then later find out they didn't talk to zoning, and then you have to try to evict them from the space. Maybe there's something, is that possible to do something like that?
That was a question for us.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a question
So just for clarification, as when Phoenix moves in as the general tenant, they applied for a tenant permit with the town. But then would Phoenix be willing to, for each of the sub-lessees that you're going to have in each suite, just submit a form to the town saying, this is the tenant in suite A, and they're going to be doing X, Y, Z?
To my knowledge, I don't think they have had to do that in the past in other towns.
But would you be willing to do that in this?
I guess, yes. I have to speak with Phoenix and see what they, it's a franchise, so they have also their steps and along the way and how they run things. So I'm sure it wouldn't be a problem.
I mean, we can certainly agree to a condition that all of the sub-leased spaces will be for permitted uses.
Okay.
Happy to coordinate with the zoning officer and make sure, some compliance check to make sure that that's, that it is all permitted uses on an ongoing basis. We could agree to some, making an effort or approaching the franchisor to see, what's permitted at that level. Understanding that it's a franchise and she can't agree to that tonight.
Okay.
Okay. And Jen, on that note, it's probably something where we might want to make a recommendation to the council that ordinance covering this type of business would be beneficial.
There's definitely an argument with zoning officers and other municipalities about prohibiting this type of use, because you can't control the other little tenants that move in unless they change the ordinance and make everyone apply. And I don't want you to have to charge somebody new, and I understand the whole concept. I don't want to have to charge them $75 zoning permit. I don't want anyone to not want to try that use. I'm just worried that you would rent to somebody who you thought was a permitted use, like I said, and we more felt that they were more along the lines of the med spa use, and because we've denied like 5 med spas in the last 3 months. So it's a very popular use. So they're all going to gravitate to you immediately as soon as they understand your opening. So I just don't want you to have any difficulties going in and thinking that those are permitted, because they're very popular right now. But there's a medical component to them that they're being reviewed. So I just want to cover it. If you were not applying to the board now and you were just applying to zoning, I'd probably be asking you to submit a tenant permit for every one of them. But since we're having this dialogue and I can have it here, we can make it a little bit easier.
So do you think that down the road, something like that's is it that the towns don't know how to handle the situation?
It's new.
Right.
It's just new. And once you're in
Because I agree.
and
you're
we're
probably-
comfortable.
Right, there probably will be some that will come to me, because it's a nice, small space. Where they can do
Right.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, and we'll have dialogue about those tenants as they go on, just to make sure. You can always call me and say, and I like a letter of intent from someone that explains. The nail and hair salons, you have absolutely no worry about. It's that middle ground that I don't even know if they could do that in this type of suite, because it's so new to me. I'm not really sure, but.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I just
Yes,
step
Mr.
over the line?
Stanzio.
Can I step over the line one more second?
I didn't mean to put such a restriction on you. I just
No, I
wanted to
know,
keep things
but you know
moving.
what? I am a
Yeah.
small business guy. I appreciate small businesses. I know that we have an incredible amount of barbershops in this town. But there's a lot of employees there. There's a lot of people that have actually invested money in actually renovating their places. There's new places that have opened up over the past few years. And, the last thing I'd like to see is, a lot of their businesses be dissolved. But I also do know, in the same token, is that a lot of these guys are there and they're like the best guy in the place. Like, is there going to be a real like vetting process? Hey, let's talk to people in town. Let me figure out, because the last thing I'd want to see is something like you guys come in and then all of a sudden like we have 8 empty vacant buildings on Beverwyck Road.
I don't personally think it's going to all be people who work in Parsippany. If I lived 2 towns over and have a clientele that I've had for 10 years, or even 3 towns over, and I saw this opportunity, my clients would still follow me.
Why'd you pick Parsippany?
I grew up in Montville, and I've always been in Parsippany too. And my dad, many years ago, owned a gas station in Lake Hiawatha, and I've always been part of Parsippany, and I think it's a great place.
I mean, him and he's got great hair. I've got okay hair, right? So it's just, it's looking at clientele.
I worked in Troy Hills Plaza when Hair and Beyond was there, when I was 17. I think it was called Hair and Beyond, I don't know, but I've always been in Parsippany.
We want to keep businesses strong in the town and make sure that they're
I
strong.
don't see it hurting anybody, to be honest with you. We wouldn't wipe out an entire salon.
Yeah.
Maybe one person would go from this salon, another one from another. It happens.
No, I understand. It's business.
In this business, they move around a lot anyway.
100%. Good. Clive?
All right. Any other questions from our board?
Just got like a housekeeping question on when you identify the businesses, each suite, how will they be identified, like when they advertise?
It would be Phoenix Salon, maybe, Andrea's salon at Phoenix Salon Suites. Okay, but every door in that hallway, every door to the business will have their own unique name, business name. They run it exactly like a business, their own business. They're just gonna pay me rent.
So it would kind of be like when you have an office building with multiple
Yes,
tenants,
exactly.
except
Like
instead of office work,
Mhm.
it's personal service salon type.
Any profit margins above and beyond, or it's just a flat fee?
For me, it depends on the size space.
Your normal space, is there,
So for
you're
like
gonna pay me this much money, and then if
yeah,
you're,
it's like weekly. It's a weekly rate. I don't have the numbers yet. Depends.
okay.
Okay, and the equipment that's going to be in this space, will there be plumbing? Will there be, I assume, electricity? Could you just go through the list of the,
I mean, each suite will have its own plumbing and electric.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions, so I will conclude that and hand it back to your attorney.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next witness will be Cindy Kozar, our traffic engineer. And as she's getting situated, I will pass out the next exhibit packet for everybody.
And so will you be marking this one also?
Yes.
Okay.
There's going to be a few throughout her testimony, but we will mark this as, this will be the first one. Yes, but this is your, so we'll mark this as A2. And A2 is, I believe, a blown-up portion of one of the charts that were in the parking evaluation.
Thank you, yes.
I have another non-parking question.
Go ahead, Mr. Stanzio.
I know where you are now exactly, but I'm just saying, you're the owner of the property?
He's not on the mic, so you're,
I know. So if you want to come on the mic, I have a question for you.
okay.
Sport clips, are they done?
Sports Clips is in and operating. They were open today when I stopped by the property earlier.
They're end of operating?
No, they were operating tenant, yes.
Okay. There's no, anything in your lease that you would not put a competitive entity or anything like that in?
No, not at all.
Okay. All right. Good luck to them. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So if you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
And please state your name, spell your last name, and provide the board with some background on your experience and licensing.
Right, my name is Sandy Koza, K-O-Z-A. I'm with McMahon Associates, a Bowman Company. Our address is 425 Commerce Drive, Fort Washington, PA. I've been a traffic engineer with the same company for the past 23 years. I have a civil engineering degree, a bachelor's and a master of science from Penn State University. I'm also a licensed professional engineer since 2008 in the states of PA, New Jersey, Maryland, and Ohio. And I do a lot of private development, traffic impact studies, parking studies, that type of thing, and we also do municipal-wide traffic studies and reviews for other townships in the state of PA.
And your licenses remain in good standing?
Yes, they are.
Do any members of the board have any questions about this witness? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and approve this witness.
Thank you. Ms. Koza, has your office been engaged by the applicant as the project traffic engineer for this site?
Yes, we have.
And you prepared the parking evaluation report that was submitted?
Yes, we did.
Great. So can you please take the board through the existing conditions of the property and then your findings?
Okay, so what we have on the screen over there, rather on the board, that's the existing conditions of the site. So that's an overview of where we are, which is the south of US 46, the north of I-80, and then we're to the west of South Beverwick Road, which is County Road 637. So we have a right-in, right-out access on US 46, as well as another right-in access on there, and then we have a right-in, right-out access on South Beverwick and a full movement access on South Beverwick. So what we did was we went out to the site out here, and we verified how the parking conditions were under current conditions. We had a copy of the Alta survey, and we were verifying what they had on there in terms of the actual parking spaces out there. So we had staff that went out and they counted all the spaces out there to verify what was park rails and things like that. So that we have our existing parking count is 1,025 spaces. That includes 10 spaces that are reserved for patron pickup that are in front of some of the other businesses, like some of the smaller restaurants. And that also includes 23 ADA spaces out there. What it doesn't include is the park rails, and we counted 8 of them when we were out there. So those are not included in that 1025 number for the existing parking spaces. And we usually don't count those because obviously a car can't get in them if they're being used by the parking rail.
Yes. Yeah, and while you're discussing the existing conditions, could you please just describe for the board the existing nonconformities that are on the site?
All right, so there are 5 existing nonconformities, and basically there's going to be no changes to any of those. So the first one is related to the rear yard setback. There's a requirement to have 50 feet, and basically what's out here on the site right now is a 43-foot setback. The impervious coverage is a requirement to have 80% max. That's also staying the same at 86.9%. The maximum building coverage was required to be 20% max permitted, and what's out there right now is 23.3%. Again, no change with that. And then the minimum landscape green area, and this is mainly along US 46, 25 feet was required, and basically there's 7.3 feet out there. The last one had to do with the minimum building gross floor area, that a minimum size of 10,000 square feet was required. And basically, there's a minimum out there of 2,885 square feet, which is lower than that minimum 10,000 square feet. So there's no changes in any of the buildings and the parking lot layout as part of this project. So all those existing conditions and the existing nonconformities are remaining on site here.
Thanks, and this application does not exacerbate any of those existing conditions, correct?
No, it does not.
And can you please review the existing parking supply and then what it would look like should the application be approved tonight?
So the existing parking supplies for 1,025 spaces, and if approved, that number is going to remain. What we're asking for is relief from the required 1370. And that number is basically a result of the township's requirement that for every salon suite, there be 3 spaces. So then the salon itself is required to have 117 spaces. So when we added that to the previous requirement with the Dollar Tree took off their spaces, which was 1287, and then we took off their 34 spaces, added the 117, we're coming up with that 1370. So we're basically looking for relief of about 345 spaces then, because that's the difference between the 1370 and the 1025. So in support of that parking relief, what we did was we had staff going out there on 3 different days. They went out there on Thursday, May 4th, May 5th, and then Saturday, April 29th. They were out there from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And what they were doing was they were walking around the entire parking lot. And I'm going to switch to one of the figures that's in the report. I would just get marked as A3 then?
Yes, so this is A3, also in the packet that all of you have in front of you.
And what this shows is when we go out here, because this is such a large shopping center, we subdivide the parking lot into various zones. Then we can get an idea of where the parking demand is, where the parking supply is. And this also enables us to look at specifically the areas that are adjacent to the Dollar Tree to make sure that there's sufficient parking in those areas for when it switches over to the Phoenix Salon. So this is one of the figures from the report, and basically, when we're looking at this, the overall parking, what we did was we looked at the peak parking demand on all 3 of those days. The maximum parking demand was on a Saturday, and it was for 435 spaces. So we're well below the 50% mark in terms of occupancy and use of those parking spaces. So there is sufficient parking out here to add in the 117 spaces. We would be taking us up to 500 and some spaces. I'll have to get that number.
552.
Yes, 552 is what I have on my other sheet here.
Sorry, can I interrupt? Can you say
Yes.
it one more time? So you're saying on a Saturday at peak time, the most cars in there were 435 cars at one time?
Yes, that's what
Okay.
we observed.
And that was Saturday, what was the date again?
April 29th.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right. One of the other things that we also have in the back of the report, we do have time of day charts for that go through each one of those days and show how the parking varied in each one of the zones. So if you wanted to look at one of those zones specifically, you could do that. So what we did was we looked at that in terms of what was out there. So our next spot was to look at the future parking demand out there. So what we did was we overlaid that 117 parking spaces onto each one of those hours, knowing that it was a conservative estimate, and that if we could fit that 117 on here within the entire parking lot, and specifically within zones 6 and 7, we can have space for what's required per zoning for that area for the parking. So that's one of the things that we have within zone 6 and 7. We had a peak of 111 spaces under existing conditions, and when you add the 117 spaces to zone 6 and 7 alone, we end up with 228 spaces, and that was on a Saturday. And those 2 areas have a parking supply of 242 spaces, so there is sufficient parking in there if all those people were to park at the same time in those 2 zones for the salon. So we looked at that. We don't think that that's realistic in terms of how the salon is actually going to operate in terms of the entrepreneurial part of the business, not all the salon suites being open at the same time. So one of the things that we did was we went out and did some observations at the Cinnaminson shopping center where they have the salon. And that salon has 44 suites. And when we were out there, they only had 18 suites were operational out of that number. So not all of them operate at the same time, and that's part of each of the businesses setting their own hours, and whenever they have an appointment, they would obviously be there, but if they didn't have an appointment, they wouldn't be there. So that's part of what we looked at. So when we looked at their peak occupancy for their 18 suites, they had a peak parking demand of 34 spaces. So then when you take that 34 divided by 18 and then multiply it by the 39 up here, you're looking at about 67 parking spaces max if we were to equate that same number to this facility here, which is well below the 117. But we still looked at the 117 in terms of can it fit into those separate zones. One of the things that we have in the back of the report, and I'm going to pull up the one that has the most parking demand. And this is probably going to be A4 then. This is chart E in the report. But basically what we did, this is the time of day variation for what's in zone 6 and 7. So the two blue numbers are the existing parking demand within zone 6 and 7. And then what we did was we looked at what the parking demand pattern was at the Cinnamon store. And we overlaid that based on what we were seeing out there. And then we also then took this box here, and this box here, if you have the green and the yellow, goes out to 117. So when we looked at the peak here, that occurred from 3 to 4 on Saturday, and we still had 14 spaces in those two zones for the parking, so that we could meet what the requirement was within that zone.
So just to reiterate that even if all 117 spaces were acquired and used at one time, which based on your testimony and Ms. Cavelli's testimony before you, is a highly unlikely scenario. Even if that were the case, there's sufficient parking both just in zone 6 and 7 and also in the lot as a whole to accommodate all 117 cars.
Yes, there is.
And that's at any peak hour during the days of the week being surveyed.
Yes.
I have no further questions on direct, but happy to answer anything more.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Meth?
Sure, I have about one question with about probably 9 parts. So, just kidding. So first of all, so you counted 435 and 414, 412 on a Friday, correct?
That was the maximum on Friday, from
Yeah.
between the hours of 9 and 7.
And there's about 200,000 odd square feet in the shopping plaza, right? So that's running at about 2 per thousand.
Yes.
How does that compare? Did you compare that to the ITE parking generation manual, or?
Yes, most places that have parking requirements for shopping centers, they typically require a parking supply of about 4, and then your parking demand is much lower than that.
I'm pretty sure ours is at least 6.
Yes.
I mean, and that was, my next question was, you didn't do these counts in December, which is usually a higher parking demand, correct?
No, but even if we were to increase the parking out here overall in the shopping center, there's still going to be plenty of parking out here for everything.
Okay. I am curious about the accounts you did at Cinnaminson. You said that it's in a shopping center?
Yes.
All right. How did you isolate the parking for it?
This is where it gets fun, because again, it's in the shopping center. We had someone sitting in one of the spaces closest to the doors, and they actually counted the number of patrons going in and out. We just assumed, even if there were 2 patrons going in together, each one of them came in their own car.
Okay, so this is really customers.
Yes.
Extrapolated to cars.
Yes.
And I just kind of glancing, I got an advanced copy of the report. Just so if everyone's curious how I know this stuff.
Time?
Just so you know, I like these types of questions. I like them.
You two will have a good time talking
No, but
afterwards.
I noticed you have a whole bunch of samples of how many suites were used at any given time.
Mhm.
And the maximum I saw was 27 of the 44. Is that because you had a whole bunch of different dates and number of suites that were occupied at the same time? Or at one time, out of the 44?
They had told us that when we asked for the occupancy there, they had told us that it was 18 suites that were occupied at Cinnamon. That's what I was told.
Didn't you have the table, like, in your Appendix E, that has a whole bunch of samples and averages 18?
Yes. It's all pursued.
Hold on.
E3.
E3, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so they actually pulled a bunch of different dates here. So these were not the dates that we did our counts on. So what they did was they pulled data all the way back from September of 2022 through October of 2022. And they looked at the occupancy of those suites on those particular days, just so that we could have an idea of what the occupancy was as well. So even, like, if you look at the first one on Friday, September 9th, they had 44 suites there, but in the middle of the afternoon, only 21 were occupied. And then if you go down further, Monday, October 3rd, obviously Monday's not a good day for them. There was only 3 out of the 44 occupied. So this is the data that Phoenix was able to supply us in terms of the actual occupancy patterns that they had in the area.
Right, I was just noting that the highest I see on this list is 27 of the 44, 61% occupancy.
Yes.
So, and the average was 41%. All right.
Yes, for the suite occupancy, yes.
No, well, thank you for doing such a great job. This is pretty, yeah, it gives us a good understanding of what this use is likely to really generate.
Any other questions for the traffic witness? Yes, Mr.
Thank you.
Napolitano.
Thank you. This is A3, the one that's color coded, and it says Zone 10, Zone 11, that one there. There's 7 spaces in Zone 10 behind the green part of the building. Are those assigned to that business? How's that work? Or that's just anybody? Like, the one, I guess,
Okay, so you're on figure 3 in the report zone, the one that has the existing overall?
yes, figure 3, correct. Are those 7 spots assigned to that particular business? It's anybody?
I do not think those spots in the back are assigned to any specific
Okay.
business.
All right, that just means there's 7 spots there.
Yes.
All right, so, as Mr. Meth was saying, though, about the number of units being occupied at one time. So let's just say out of the 39, 30 get occupied, right?
Mhm.
I mean, 30 are working.
Right.
Then there's 30 clients, so that's 60, and then 30 people are waiting for the next. At one point, there could be 90 cars just for that one business. Probably not gonna happen, though, right?
No, that's
The way you're gonna
probably not
stagger the,
happen. A lot of it's probably different for you to get your haircut versus.
Oh, it's
me.
very easy. I'm done in, a minute. Yeah.
Here's one. I'm kind of,
Strike that.
Some could take an hour.
I'm usually there at least 2 hours.
Oof.
Color highlights everything.
3 hours.
Yeah, it took
All
my
right,
daughter
so
4 the other day.
That scenario would never happen.
Right.
Got it.
So that's why you're probably not going to get 30 people waiting.
Gotcha.
The other thing is when they're scheduling these, because these are private appointments, they're going to schedule them so that they have some time in between appointments to clean up their suite. So, there's no hair clippings or anything like that on the floor. They would do something like that, and they might even give themselves a short break to have a snack or something.
Perfect. Thank you, and thanks for the great report.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Dedich?
quick question, right? So based on what I'm looking at these charts, so there is a higher concentration of parking need in zone 6 and 7 when Phoenix comes in, right? So would we also need additional or little higher number of the reserve parking for the handicap parkings?
For this use, I think they're
Right.
meeting their ADA
So
requirements overall in this.
is the question, will this specific tenant have reserved ADA spaces?
Right, see, I'm thinking it this way, right? Let's say for the entire shopping center, there's a X number of parking spots required as per the ADA code. But there is a higher concentration of parking in the zone 6 and 7, right? So there must be a higher number of ADA parkings within those 2 zones, just to accommodate that additional need, right?
So I think there are 23 spaces, 23 total ADA spaces on site?
Yep. But we don't want somebody one of the Phoenix customers parking far at the end of near Panera and come back, right, walking, right?
Ideally, they would be parking close by. I guess I'm not following what the question is,
There are 39 tenants now, right, within that small area. So concentration of parking requirement is higher there in zone 6 and 7. So if there are already 3 ADA parking spots, I think it's low considering that.
well, they meet their ADA requirements site-wide, and just as there may be some for this tenant, there may be some for a tenant that's closer to zone 1 or 2. So that's why the ADA spaces are located, where they are currently.
Right, and I believe there are 5 out in that area.
Strip C201. Yes.
So while they're checking, question for our professionals, do we know how much parking was required for the outgoing tenant? Do we know that? Instead of 117, was it much lower?
It was lower, that's why they're here.
Right, so that's what my question is, right? If Dollar Tree required, let's say 3 ADA parking spots, now they have higher need of regular parking, wouldn't that require in the same ratio, right? ADA parking spots?
Andrew, the parking is,
No, the parking required for ADA would be overall for the
But
shop.
that's where the problem is, right?
And I think I understand your question, maybe, is it appropriately located near this facility? Can you
Yeah.
show where where's ADA space, some ADA spaces are located?
This is gonna be in here. This is one of the pages of the site plan.
So this will be Exhibit A5. I believe this is the second sheet of your package.
Right.
So, here's the Dollar Tree. So these are 4 ADA spaces.
Could you bring the
right
mic,
here
please?
that are
I'm sorry.
shared with everyone in this area. And then there's another
Just pull it off.
ADA space.
Yeah.
She should try
Yes.
these microphones here, he's being picked up well.
Okay, they sound like they couldn't hear anything.
No, it was more that I was more worried about a record because she was talking correctly.
Nora said it's getting captured now.
Okay, good. All right.
And then there's 2 more spaces off to the other side as well. So there are about 6 ADA spaces in the general vicinity of where their entrance would be. But it's shared with all the other uses, which is typical.
Right, so my question is, when Dollar Tree was there, we needed 6 ADA parking spots. Right,
It's not calculated on a tenant-by-tenant basis, so every time a tenant comes in, they don't reevaluate what the ADA requirements are. It's only when there's new parking spaces going in, if they hit a certain level that would trigger the need for a new ADA space, they would install one at that time. But there's not a reevaluation done every time there's a change in tenant.
yeah, no, so I understand the guidance there, right? Overall parking spots, right? But now, with the Phoenix coming in, there is a higher concentration, 117 parking spots will be used in zone 6 and 7. So wouldn't ADA go up in the same ratio, right? Dollar Tree was not, there are more customers coming in, that's what I'm going. Which means some customers will park further away and come back walking.
So do you think that the number of ADA stalls in the area is sufficient for the proposed use?
Yes, I do.
And the number that I heard was 23 ADA spots
There's 23 overall in the center.
in the entire center?
Yes.
And based on the requirements, is that meeting the standard for 1025 or for 1370?
I believe it would be based on the parking spaces provided, not required.
Yeah, it's based on the actual number of parking spaces
Okay.
supplied, not the overall demand or ordinance requirement.
Okay, well, I won't pretend to be an expert on this. I'll instead defer to Mr. Dodich if
Yeah,
he
and
thinks
I'll
that
just
that's
add as
sufficient.
well that the requirement is not only the number of spaces, that they have to be located reasonably accessible, or reasonably close to the use. So there is a bank of several ADA spaces in Zone 7, is that correct?
Yes, there is.
Yeah. So that's about as close, that's reasonably close to the use.
Yeah, I mean, but I feel like that's not sufficient in the zone 6 and 7, based on the higher demand in zone 6 and 7.
And that potentially a lot of people who need ADA spaces are visitors of Michael's and then potentially...
Michael's and Phoenix, right? So 6 may not be enough, right, based
Okay.
on the usage there.
I mean, we appreciate the comment. The applicant is not proposing changes to the distribution of ADA spaces as part of this application.
Okay.
Okay.
But, you know, the applicant is always looking for ways to improve the site as a whole and site circulation. So, you know, the representative of the applicant's here tonight. I'm sure he heard you. You know,
Yeah.
as they reevaluate.
I mean, I would recommend if you could add two more, right? Just, I mean, again, it's more customer service, right? Again, it's more in Phoenix's favor, right? If there is more customer service, so yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? And just so I don't forget, any questions from the general public? All right, seeing none, I'll turn it back over to the attorney.
Thank you. And our last witness this evening will be our planner.
If you please raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name and spell your last name and provide your business address and then some background on your qualifications.
Sure. Matthew Flynn, Flynn. Business address is 101 Gibraltar Drive, Morris Plains, New Jersey. I'm employed by John McDonough Associates. I've testified before dozens of boards like this across the state. My education comes from Rutgers. I have my master's degree in planning and public policy, as well as my professional planner's license in the state of New Jersey, as well as my national licensure, which is the AICP.
And your license remains in good standing?
Yes.
Any questions from the board about the credentials of the witness? All right, the witness is accepted as an expert in planning.
Thanks very much. Mr. Flynn, you heard the testimony this evening. Have you been engaged by the applicant as the planner?
Yes.
And you've had a chance to review the application materials and you've heard all tonight's testimony?
I have.
Great. I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. So as the board knows by now, we are requesting just one C variance, which is that parking variance, with that 1,025 parking spaces that are proposed and existing versus the 1,370 parking spaces that's required. That's the only variance that we're seeking tonight. Like the applicant's team mentioned, we are keeping the existing buildings, the existing configuration of the property, including circulation, access, etc. All of that will remain exactly as it is today. So to get into that statutory criteria for relief for that one variance, I think it can be justified by the C2 balancing test or by the benefits of the application as a whole substantially outweighing the detriments. First, the positives. We heard that this is a permitted use. All of the tenants that are going to be located here will have permitted uses. I would say that this is continuing the positive transformation of this shopping center with another very high-quality business, providing opportunities to entrepreneurs as well as options for residents and patrons of this type of establishment. I would say that giving residents choices for these types of uses does foster healthy competition. It fosters a dynamic of innovation where establishments continually strive to, I won't say one up, but offer distinct and better services than the rest. And I would say that it's definitely a good thing for the town. If somebody needs a haircut, they certainly know what town to look in. I would say that the grant of the variance would align with the principle of fostering diverse business opportunities while maintaining appropriate parking provisions. We heard from our traffic expert that there is adequate parking available on the property. I actually went out there earlier today, and in the vicinity of the proposed establishment, I did see a large amount of unused parking spaces like the traffic expert testified to. So all of the above promote purposes of the municipal land use law, including purpose A, promotion of the general welfare, purpose G, variety of uses in appropriate locations, purpose M, efficient use of land, and purpose I, desirable visual environment. So the flip side to that is the negative criteria, no substantial detriment to the public or to the zone plan. Again, no site modifications whatsoever. We're just talking about this interior fit up of the existing tenant space there. I think the main question before the board, which has been addressed at this point, is whether this business is appropriate here considering the increase in parking demand. Again, we are looking at a property with a large amount of available parking, so I do think that this use is appropriate here. And I would say that the zoning ordinance requirement for parking, it does give two calculations, one for the gross floor area of the establishment, and the other is the number of barbers or stylists or what have you. And we have to go with the larger of the two, which in this case is number of barbers. I said this use is unique in the fact that we aren't looking at a fully staffed establishment like we usually see with barbershops. So I think the applicant has done its due diligence here by looking at other similar establishments, which is that other Phoenix salon out in Cinnaminson. So all said, I think this is an appropriate project, and I think that all the appropriate questions have been addressed before the board this evening, and approval is warranted.
Thanks,
Okay,
man. I don't have any further questions.
all right. Any
Question,
questions
Chairman?
from the board? Go ahead, Mr. Stanzio.
All right, so you rattled off a lot. Great valid points, but the one thing that I see is what is a detriment to the community? There's a neighbor right to this facility that's probably going to go belly up, right? Right in the same facility. Usually you see when you have, little malls like that there's some non-compete type agreements, but then there's also, I'm going to throw a number off the top of my head, 9+ barbershops within Parsippany, that are in 9+ different buildings all throughout the town, that I see this being a communal detriment. And whether you have one guy that leaves one place, because listen, a place that I go to, there's probably one guy that's really good, and he pulls the whole crowd, and then the other guys are okay, and he kind of helps augment because he's so busy. But if you pull that one guy out of each one of those places, there's going to be no barbershops in Parsippany. Maybe we have too many, we probably do. But you have a lot of businesses in the town that are going to go under, that people own those buildings and rent those buildings out. So unless there's some valid replacement process, has your client looked at doing a job fair? Has it, is there processes in place to shore up the existing businesses that are in the community? Because I look at something like this as being a negative. It could be a positive, but part of me is saying that this could be a negative.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments and question. Just to confirm, this is a permitted use in the zone?
Correct. Yeah, and I'm not aware of any ordinance or non-compete resolution that...
I didn't say that there was. I just said that usually...
I know, I understand.
When you see,
Understood.
you own a strip mall, it's like, hey, you're not going to put a sub shop next to a sub shop or a pizzeria next to a pizzeria.
And understanding that the variance relief we're seeking is directly related to parking.
Yeah.
Do you see, after hearing the comments from Board Member Stanziali, any detriment to the application?
I do not.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board members? Any questions from our professionals? Any questions from the public? All right, seeing none, I think we've accomplished all of our questions of the planning witness.
Sorry, Charlie, could you repeat that?
I just said we finished all of our questioning.
Great, thank you. We have no further witnesses this evening. I think you've heard that this is a tenant that's excited to be in Parsippany and operate. You've heard substantial testimony about how there is sufficient parking on site to handle this new tenant and the increased code requirements for a beauty salon and the planning justifications for that variance relief. And with that, we would request respectfully that the board approve the application and variance relief.
Okay. Thank you very much for your application. At this time, I'd like to open it up to the general public for any comments on the application. What?
Love it.
I didn't just
Legend.
run right through that. Please give your name and, sorry, yeah, I'm taking your job.
Sorry, just state your name and provide your address for the record.
Frank Cahill, 90 East Halsey Road, Parsippany. I'm for this application. I hold a couple different hats in Parsippany. One, I'm the executive board member of the Parsippany Area Chamber of Commerce. I'm also chairman of Parsippany Economic Development. This is a very unique use. I happen to use one in another town, and I'm very happy with it. As for sports clips, that's like a walk-in business. It's not really where you go to have your hair groomed and styled. For the last 3 or 4 years, I've been going to another town, and so I'm glad it's coming to Parsippany. And I will say, this last time I got a haircut was from a place like Sports Clips, and they totally destroyed my hair because my person was away on vacation. So this is a very unique use, and I think it'll be very good for Parsippany. I don't think it'll put any other salons out of business because each person's an individual, and they have their own business that they're running. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think his hair was great before.
Okay. Any other comments from the general public? Seeing none, I'll close the public portion. Do any members of the board have any comments on this application? Mr. Napolitano?
I do. The business model, I like what I hear. I like that new businesses are coming to town. I do share some of Mr. Stanzial's concerns, but I think all the building we're doing in town, we're gonna have an explosion in population, and there'll be plenty of clients. The traffic report with all the parking is outstanding, and I feel there's plenty of parking, and gonna grant the variance needed, and I'm voting in favor of this.
Hopefully not with Mr. Napolitano's hair, because otherwise.
I won't be a client.
Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead, Mr. Meth.
I'd like to say, I'm very familiar with this site because until recently, I was going to the Eastport gym every day. So I know, like, that was in there, which is now closing in about a week. This site is overparked. I have no problem with a parking variance for this site. I also do believe that this, we should really look at our ordinance requirements. It's for parking. It may create a better opportunity so we don't have to force people to come ask for variances for uses like this. But, yeah, no, I'm very comfortable with the parking, and I'm very intimately familiar with this, property.
Yeah, I'd add on to that. I mean, with the advent of so much ordering online and just picking up at these businesses, the time in which a person is shopping at these locations and being present is less. Maybe parking can be revisited, but I just also want to add that what a wonderful presentation on transportation. I don't usually make comments about that, but it's, we don't usually get as thorough of a presentation, and it's very much appreciated. So that makes it very easy for me to understand what's going on. Thank you. All right.
I just have a question for the owner, if I may.
Go ahead.
The property. I know for a few years you had problems with the park and ride people. When that park and ride is full, they use spaces over in your property. Is that still going on, or is that been relieved?
Please come forward so you can use the mic.
It's not gonna affect my vote. I'm just curious.
Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with the park and ride and the current procedure or what's in use.
Well, it's right across the street.
I did
South
notice
Beverwick Road.
when I made a left on 46 to come here, the amount of people that I think got off a bus and that were crossing the street. I said, this is a busy road. Everyone's just staggering across. So I can take that concern back, and I can speak to property management.
It was a problem a few years ago, and I think they had some cars towed away. I just wondered if it continued or if that's been resolved.
Mr. DePiero, I think adding the Waterview site alleviated that. Plus, I think the New Jersey Transit was leasing space in Arlington Plaza. But they stopped that because the demand for parking is way down thanks to COVID. Or the fact that nobody's working from home, or people are working from home all the time now.
They're laptop businesses now.
All right.
But we'll look into that. We appreciate the follow-up.
Any other comments from the board? All right, seeing none. Are there any closing comments you'd like to make?
None other than we appreciate your time.
Okay.
In respect to the request a positive vote.
All right, I'll accept the motion on this application then.
I'll make one.
Go ahead, Mr. Napolitano.
Motion to approve application number 23:520, Federal Realty, 1123 Route 46, Block 729, Lot 7, minor site plan with C variance for parking requirements.
Okay.
Any changes, additions?
I believe that the applicant agreed to comply with the recommendations in the planner's report, and will you also comply with any recommendations in the engineering report as well?
Yes.
Okay. And then the only other ones I had, that the applicant agrees that the shop owners or suite owners will comply with the township's definition of cosmetology use and will coordinate with the zoning officer on an ongoing basis for when subtenants apply. And this most recent one, that the applicant will speak with with property management to confirm if there's any issues regarding the park and ride. That was all I had.
No issues.
Okay. I'll accept the second on this. Anyone?
Second,
All right, Dudich. All right. Nora, please call the roll.
Didich.
Yes.
DePiero.
Yes.
Neely.
Yes.
Neff.
Yes.
Napolitano.
Yes.
Shaw.
Yes.
Stanzio.
Yes.
Neely.
Yes.
Von Aiken.
Yes.
Thank you all again
Congratulations.
for your time. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much.
My wife made all this.
Just give Mr. Cahill better hair.
My wife made
Looks like he's
Yeah,
floating.
let's have Frank get back in town.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Would the members like a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. All right, seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? You can stay.
Good luck.